Unfortunately, we don't have the company of Marta de Menezes. She had a COVID and couldn't come, but we will have Rui de Oliveira and Rui Oliveira, sorry, and Hugo Canoilas. We will start with Rui. Rui is a behavioral neuroscientist, professor of behavioral biology at Ispa, a principal investigator at the Gulbenkian Science Institute, and adjunct investigator of the Champalimaud neuroscience program. His main fields of interest are the neuroendocrinology and genomic of social behavior, the evolution and mechanism underlying behavioral plasticity, and comparative social cognition. Oliveira has been using art in the scope of science communication, and he's also organizing and promoting different events in the intersection of art and science, such as seminars, exhibition, and workshops. So,
thank you. So since Marta unfortunately could not come, I think we'll have a bit more time.
Yeah.
Right? To see something positive in a bad situation. So I had this ambitious title for my talk, what is the meaning of life, the universe, and everything, which, you know, obviously it's not, I did not come up with this. This is Douglas Adams' famous quote from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And I decided to start with Douglas Adams because I think this is the question that drives both arts and science. So both artists and scientists, I think, are mind wanderers, are people that are not only concerned with immediate rewards of, you know, getting something for lunch or whatever, but they are typically people that have this more, you know, primitive, innate need to understand the world and to share their understanding with others. And so I think art and science are basically sharing the same goal, that is to understand and describe the world around us. They use different epistemologies, but they are basically sharing the same motivation and goals. I think the major difference, and other people have pointed to this, are that the inspiration for the two are different. So science is more focused on objectivity and external world, and art more in subjectivity and internal world, but ultimately I think the quest is quite the same. And so after making this statement that I think we are all on the same boat in terms of goals and overall goals and motivation, I would basically share with you 3 topics that I have experienced this art-science interaction. So the first one was to communicate science and to use art in science communication. And so this happened a couple of years ago. I'm a scientist by training, but I've always had an interest in art. And in 2017, I was approached by the board of Gulbenkian to organize an exhibition on the brain to the general audience. I was taken by surprise, and I started thinking, how should I do this? How can I achieve this? I traveled to different exhibitions on the brain at the Wellcome Trust in the UK, American Museum of Natural History, Miami, and so on. And I was always having a certain discomfort, because when I was visiting these exhibitions, I always had the feeling that I was being taught about the brain. So people were trying to give me a lesson on the brain works, and I was not reacting favorably. Although I have a huge interest about the brain, I felt like, you know, this was a bit childish. It's like, well, there's the brain, and there's this part of the brain doing this, and that part of the brain doing that. And so when I came back, I had a conversation with them, and I said, I think we need to do something ourselves. It was a bit naive and ambitious. And I think we knew that we need a different approach. So this is just to share with you that there was not, you know, a discussion or a theoretical reflection on how to do this. It was very organic, that I just felt it was not the way to do it. And I felt that if you need to engage an audience in a scientific topic, or I think I would say whatever topic, you need to create a sense of wonder. You need them to be curious about the subject that you want to convey information about, and you need to engage them. And then I realized that I think I need to, you know, bring art into this, because that's one of the things that good pieces of art do, is this wonder effect, is wow. And so I started looking around, and the first thing I saw, which was very inspirational, was this piece by Daniel Canogar. It's a piece called The Brain. It's a permanent exhibit at the Museum for Human Evolution in Burgos, in Spain. And he basically has this, you know, brain model, but very metaphoric, with loads of cables that you can enter, and I will not spend all the time going through all these. Okay, just you can enter it, and as you enter it, you see the inside of the brain, and then the inside of this Canogar's brain are just sparks of light firing in these cables with optic fiber, and this sound that I hope you will hear in a minute. And I felt that this was highly contemplative and engaging, and you start wondering, wow, this is really interesting. And so I started thinking that we needed something that would produce the same effect. And so we moved on in trying to produce something that would have this effect. And by then I had met Greg Dunn in the neuroscience meetings. He was a former neuroscientist with a PhD in neuroscience that then moved into the art field and became an artist. And he had produced this very nice etching on gold leaf of a brain sagittal section, that when the incidence of the angle of light changes, it produces different reflection, that it's called self-reflection. And we discussed the idea of doing a video piece based on the light moving from different angles on this piece. And then we needed a soundscape for this, and then I approached the local musician, Rodrigo Leão, to see if he would be interested in doing this. And the outcome was very successful, and it had the effect that we hoped, that was to create this sense of wonder. Maybe if we could light down the room, or I will do it myself. That was basically when people would enter the exhibition to have an immersive experience of the brain. So people would enter a dark room. There would be, I think, 6 by 4 screens. So you would be into this image, and you would have this sound, and I think people enjoy this, and this creates the mindset to, you know, be wondering more about the brain. What is this about? And the point I'm trying to make here is that one way that science might interact with art, and I think Antonio already made this point, is that you can use art as a way to communicate science. We can discuss then if we are happy with this, if it's just not exploitation of one field by the other, but at least as scientists that want to convey a message, I think it's a very efficient way of engaging an audience. Then we wanted to do more things, and I'm giving you these examples because I think they illustrate the problems that come up when the two fields meet. So, as a scientist and the curator of a scientific exhibition, it was relatively easy to pick up two artists, a musician and a visual artist, put them together, explain them the concept, and they came up with a very nice piece. Then I wanted to do a further step that was more of an interaction, a direct interaction with one of them, with Gulbenkian. And the idea here was to basically use the brainwaves of visitors and to then use these brainwaves to create a soundscape in one of the rooms of the exhibition. And based on this, I also asked Rodrigo if we could record his own brainwaves, and we would induce different emotions on Rodrigo using psychology paradigms that induce different emotions. We would get, you know, EEGs of Rodrigo, you know, fearful Rodrigo, happy Rodrigo, disgusted Rodrigo, and so on and so forth. And he would create a translation like, you know, the protein being translated or whatever. In this case, it would be brainwaves. This was inspired by the fact that you can listen to neurons. So people here that have been to electrophysiology labs know that you can put an amplifier to an oscilloscope. So in the old times, without computers, that's how you would do it. You would be listening to firing neurons. So this is a dorsal CA1 assemble of neurons firing in the brain of a sleeping rat. And so the idea is that, okay, you can pick up these and then you can try to translate these into a music scale, and maybe something interesting will come out. And the problem here is a communication between the two sides. So when I explained the concept to Rodrigo, we found it interesting, but he could not swallow it. So he was saying, this is not music. And I was like, no, I know, it's, it's a soundscape. Oh, but this doesn't sound good. And I was like, it sounds like it sounds, it's what it is. And so he could not resist to compose on top of the sounds that his brain was producing in different emotional states. And so it becomes something that, in my opinion, is not so much interesting. So that's what Rodrigo came up with for the recording of fear brainwaves of his own brain. And to me, this is not much different than Peter and the Wolf. Right? It's fear, but it's, you know, and then joy. Can recognize a lot of influences and anger. Sorry, I was trying to shut down the red hippocampus. Anger is a bit more interesting, but still. Okay. My point here in showing you this is that one of the obstacles that comes up when you try to have the two fields communicating to each other is that you need to be open to this, and it's difficult to find a partner on the other side that is receptive to your ideas, and you also need to be receptive to his ideas. This was the end result. I'm sharing this here with you, and I shared this with Luke, so it's not, I'm not saying something that he's not aware of, that this was not what I had in mind. Then the other point I would like to do with this is that sometimes, this I think questions what Lind was saying about using the Turing test to validate art pieces. Another thing that we did for this exhibition was an idea that we had to make a very large-scale neuron. So we had this 12-meter long sculpture of a neuron with an axon that had sensors, movement sensors, would detect the presence of visitors and would fire in response to the presence of visitors. You can see here the neuron being assembled. It was assembled in Alcochete, in a very large boat hangar in Alcochete, because we needed a very large space. Then it needed to be transported to Lisbon. And what you can see here is a short clip, because it became a bit hilarious that you needed to transport a 12-meter long neuron across the river and to, you know, take it across the Gulbenkian gardens and into the gallery. So it was a bit of you see now the accent crossing the garden, and then it was installed, and it was very successful, and people liked it, and so on and so forth. But the question is that, contrary to the first piece of breakdance video installation with the soundscape by Rodrigo, this was not identified in the exhibition as a piece of art. So the first one had, you know, one of these tables with the name of the authors and so on. This was just hanging from the ceiling. So Eric Costa, which is an amazing guy, who was for many years the technical director of Dona Maria II Theatre, and he was responsible for one of the shows in Expo '98 that you were talking about. He's an artisan, he's not an artist. So he's amazing with fiberglass sculpture, and there are kilometers of optic fibers inside and so on, but he was not signing the piece. So for him, this was just, you know, something that he did because we explained to him what we had in mind, and he produced this. And so this is also an interesting discussion that one can have in terms of intention, which I think is the point that can be raised to the Turing test, that on the eye of the beholder, you might not tell apart things, but you might not tell apart a Cy Twombly you know, painting from a child thing, or you cannot tell apart a Rosa Ramalho ceramic from a proper art thing. And I think that does not mean that both of them are art pieces. There's the way, the thing about how to validate art that is more than not telling things apart. On the eye of the beholder, there's the intention behind it. And then we have Lionel Moore, and this is an example of Lionel's robots. And the point here is that we were using this to communicate science. Then, apart from using this to communicate science, the other experience I had, or I'm still having, is together with Lionel. We had this project of, well, not really project, we had this ongoing process of discussing non-human art. It started with an idea of Lionel of making an exhibition on non-human art. Then it evolved into an idea of producing a book. We have very different views, and it's a pity that Lionel is not present. The problem here is the mental continuity across agents. That's my problem in this discussion with Lionel. For Lionel, what robots do, it's art, and what animals might do, it's art. And so there's an implicit assumption here, which was discussed in the previous panel, that is the mental continuity of the agents that produce the artifact that we are classifying as art. There has been this discussion that there's mental continuity between animals and humans. Continuity doesn't mean that they are the same, but that things are not, you know, differentiated in a qualitative way, which was something that Charles Darwin pointed to some years ago. And now the question is if we can consider AI as just a cognitive extension of human minds, and again, there would be continuity. And what I'm talking about are things like Congo's abstract expressionism paintings that can't remember the wife of Koenig. She classified these as abstract expressionism when she first saw these paintings. They were produced by this chimpanzee that was being tutored by Desmond Morris, and Mayer Gallery in London you know, had these. They were very successful. They have a market price nowadays that is very competitive, to say the least. And the artist is the chimp. Leo, I don't know where Leo is, but you are here. Already mentioned this paper by John Handler of forced perspective in bowerbirds. So bowerbirds, you know, display objects of relative sizes in a way that make them look bigger, so they force perspective on the beholder, in this case on the females. And then you have people that have released penguins in a museum, and they were fascinated with some paintings and not with others. They would spend much more time engaged with some paintings than with others. I don't know what you can make out of this. And you even have pigeons that were trained to discriminate between Impressionist and Cubist paintings. They were successful in making the discrimination between Monet and Picasso paintings. They not only were able, obviously, to train them to discriminate, and then you give paintings that were not used to train them, and they make the thing. They are correctly assigning Picasso paintings to Picasso and Monet paintings. But they can also generalize. They generalize Monet paintings to Cézanne and to Noir, and Picasso paintings to Hague and Matisse. So this is pattern recognition. This is AI in an animal brain, okay? So this is also to say that AI is not a very high-tech thing. You can do this with other types of minds, not only with artificial minds. This raises the issue that Leo also touched this morning, that is, why are animals doing this kind of tricks? And apparently there's this explanation that Leo already put forward of sexual selection, selecting for certain perceptual abilities or even cognitive abilities. This is something that I don't know if João, what's João's take on this? This is a very debatable hypothesis of the sexy index theory of these Eshelman's, you know, tools. Very shortly, the story is that these tools have symmetry and have a number of things that might be aesthetic, and a number of them don't show signs of wear, suggesting that they were not being used as a tool, but as more of a display. But this is speculation. I think all this comes down to the definition of art, and that's my problem, not my problem, that's my argument with Lionel in this project. That is, what these animals are doing, we can discuss if it is an evidence of aesthetic experience, as Leo is putting it. But there's nowadays art has moved beyond aesthetics, and there's what people in the art world call the paradox. That is how you tell apart a Brillo box produced by Andy Warhol from a Brillo box that you can buy in a grocery store. And that was the point of Andy Warhol when he produced that. And, you know, art philosophers and historians now have this problem to deal with. How can I pay $1 million for something that was produced by Andy Warhol, and if I go to the grocery store, I pay, I don't know, $20. And basically, this led us, this moved us away from aesthetics and into what has been called the institutional theory of art, and there are in the room people more informed than me to discuss this. That is basically the idea that artwork is whatever the art world says it is an art. Right? So there's a social network of artists, curators, collectors, art critics that will decide that something is a piece of art. This has a problem that Danto put in a very nice way, that if Submed King might confer kingdom on his horse, and I feel that we can be doing this with animals. So that is the problem that then he tried to resolve, saying that artwork is, you know, an artifact that has embodied meaning. I think this is a tautological definition, because then the meaning has to be allocated by someone and you go back to one of the agents of the argument. But this is another discussion. What I wanted to highlight from all this is meaning. So we moved away from beauty to meaning, in my opinion. So art is no longer only about beauty, aesthetics. Meaning became very relevant. And therefore, if we want to discuss meaning, meaning has intentionality implicit on it. And so now the question becomes, are animals, or do animals have intentional actions or not? And then we can discuss, based on what we know from biology and so on, if there's intentionality in animals or not, if we can get better, more parsimonious explanations for apparent intentional actions from animals. And we have to be very careful with the fact that we tend to attribute intentionality to actions of animals that can be explained by natural selection. And you don't need to invoke intentionality or awareness of the consequences of the act to the animal. And I'm sharing this with you because this was like the second interaction I had with an artist, in this case Linel Moura, for a project that I feel it's interesting and intellectually challenging, but I have these very deep concerns. But the fact that we have these more deep discussions and we did not only embark into making, a list of animal artifacts that can be art, I think it's already rewarding and tells how the interaction between the two fields can be productive. The final thing is trying to think about what you can get from art as a scientist. Antonio already mentioned some of the things that I had here. So obviously you can get, for example, better data visualization. I used on purpose a very old example, one of the first examples of data visualization from the campaigns of Napoleon in Russia. But nowadays with big data, there are ways of visualizing big data that allow us to have insights into the data that we would not have without that. If you are interested in doing video playbacks, you can use, rendering to produce stimuli, visual stimuli that you can use to playback to the animals, not properly Dory and Nemo, but it's the same technology that produced these characters that you can use now to produce realistic stimuli that you can use to probe animal cognition. But more importantly, that either methodological or data visualization or any kind of more direct benefit, I think that the most profound effect that that art can produce on science is in terms of asking new questions. And this is critical in my opinion. I think this is the major benefit, more than new methodologies or any example that we came up with that we picked up something from art and applied it in science. I think, as I exemplified with this interaction I had with Lionel about non-human art, when you start these discussions across fields, you have to think much more profoundly about the questions you are addressing. And this typically allows you to ask new questions and to challenge concepts that you have already established in your field, and that's when you can have new insights and new concepts. So I think that, and this happens within science. If you are a neuroscientist and you attend immunology seminars, suddenly you see potential solutions to your problem that you would never reach if you are only attending neuroscience seminars. And this is even more true the further away you move from your field. So I think if you even move outside the sciences into art, I think this becomes even more present. And I think this allows to move from incremental to ground breaking research, potentially because you can have insights that you would not have before. So for example, the idea, if there's intentionality, how do I test that in an animal? So now I'm raising questions about animal cognition that are inspired in the dialogue between art and science. And although we have this idea that science has a recipe that I try to summarize here of testing hypotheses by a sequence of deductive and inductive logic, the key issue about science are the hypotheses we are testing, which are basically defined by the questions that we are asking. And that's why it's so important to find the right questions, to ask the right questions. And I will end these by sharing with you basically the quote that I used to the talk that illustrates that you need to ask the right questions if you want to have reasonable answers. And this is just a short excerpt from the Hitchhiker's Galaxy movie from Douglas Adams.
Mystical beings got so fed up with the constant bickering about the meaning of life that they commissioned two of their brightest and best to design and build a stupendous supercomputer to calculate the answer to life, the universe, and everything.
Oh, Default, we want you to tell us the answer.
The answer to what?
The answer to life, the universe, everything. We'd really like an answer. Something simple.
We have to think about that. Return to this place in exactly 7.5 million years.
No. They go back 7.5 million years later.
That's right. They do.
An answer for you? Yes, but you're not going to like it.
Doesn't matter, we must know it.
All right. The answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything is 42. Yes, I thought it over quite thoroughly. It is, it's 42. It would have been simpler, of course, to have known what the actual question was.
But it was the question. The ultimate question. Of everything.
That's not a question. Only when you know the question will you know what the answer means.
Give us the ultimate question, then.
I can't, but there is one who can. A computer that will calculate the ultimate question. A computer of such infinite complexity that life itself will form part of its operational matrix. And you yourselves shall take on new, more primitive forms and go down into the computer to navigate its 10 million year program. I shall design this computer for you, and it shall be called...
Okay, so this is basically to summarize also something that was addressed in the previous panel. That is basically that we should not expect AI to tell us what the ultimate question is, not even the ultimate answer to our own questions. And so we need to raise questions, and art and science, that's what they do, to raise questions, help us to ask, interesting questions, and finding ways of trying to find answers for them. So I would stop here. I think I ran even more late than the 50 minutes.
Now I invite Hugo Canoilas. Hugo is a Portuguese artist, although initially Canoilas was more dedicated to painting. His works expanded to other formats and media, such as sculpture, video, installation, and performance, becoming difficult to classify them in just one format. His works can be seen in the intersection of these classifications as more a fluid object. A painting that can expand into a sculpture, or a sculpture that can have characteristics of land art, and so on. Canoilas' work has been widely exhibited in major venues in different countries. So, Hugo.
It feels that, I mean, there's some sort of embarrassment for sure for me coming here and talking with people with such knowledge. My knowledge is partially empirical, based on experience, and of course I read and I study and so on. The truth is that I believe that this empirical knowledge is very important and probably the biggest barrier to approach science and art, in my opinion. Yesterday with Leo I was saying that in art it's quite common to understand that there are bodies that are more intelligent than others, and it's nothing to do with it's an expression. It doesn't have a scientific value, but you train your body to perceive things in certain ways. And my work is trying to develop possibilities of experience that can add to the most prominent production of images and experiences that came with the explosion of that everyone is producing images, text, and so on. So our art can come and offer something that could be a different kind of experience that still can enlarge the possibilities of knowledge within this empirical experience that you add to knowledge and to all forms of historical, social, and political events. Some years ago, contrary to what I've heard here today, I believe that the art world is completely different from the 80s or from the 20s. I think there's a major shift going on, and one is the technological revolution we are dealing with. The other is something that mostly have to do with identity politics and a renovated interest in nature, which I think it was always there. The interest in nature is not a fashion, but the fact is that nature came at a certain point as a paradigm shift, a possibility to bring something that would change the perspective on how you look at things by, of course, a critic to an anthropocentric view of or perception of the world. With so many questions going on, and being me when I'm in Portugal, because I'm only white in Portugal, I'm not white in Austria. When being a white male, taking profit of a series of systemic values that deny many other voices to come forward, I decided to build an artificial cave in the basement of a gallery in Alvalade in Lisbon, and this was made only with found objects in the street and some artworks or rests of construction things that other artists had. And we built this space to be a sort of communal project where a few very prominent new voices would come and exchange, and we would learn with it. I would learn with it, other artists would learn with it, and coming with a sense of whatever comes and keeps going on top would be everything that would happen here would be a possibility to embrace, embody, in a sense of, for many actors in the art world, they have this connection towards something that probably Julia knows better than me, but when the Cannibalist Manifesto came in Brazil, this that have then a second wave with the Tropicalia movement. It's a big shift in the sense that we make ourselves available to a multitude of inputs and forms of being, which we allow to receive, and we don't know immediately if we can get or if we want from that is what we are going to get. It's like, it deals with our desires, but also with our incapacities to acknowledge conceptually, this is now my way of doing, or is this my work? So let's say the innocent desire, and I think I would rather use the word innocent than naive, was to make an arch in time between Paleolithic art, that's what, and many forces that are playing in the contemporary art world today. So the desire to increase community within an art scene, the entry of new sensibilities that come from a multitude of genders, and the openness to many other geographies that carry other places of speech, and the possibility to also think that if Paleolithic art was created by expansion of consciousness, maybe there's something here that is a good image to think, what are we doing, since our subjectivities are marrying with the subjectivity of the machine in a sense. So I'm very afraid of saying these things in front of you, but how these two different speeds that transform ourselves, how can we prepare our bodies to deal with this heterogeneity of possibilities? So the project was made in this sense, and then it carried a very important issue for me, that is producing, of course, this is all found objects, so you are in a thing that is in between artificial and natural, and it carries this dark cloud of the Anthropocene. You know, it's like it's the footprint of humans on the crust of Earth. So, but this, most important, is that we suppress this permanent and almost unnoticed imposition of rational spaces designed by architects to have an experience. So one of the biggest problems of experience for me is that we are always with fluorescent lights and orthogonal shapes and in positions that they might not be adjusted for the experience of art. So what if we bring art into a space like this? And what happened is that most part of the people would come to a dark space instead of a place of light, and with the help of a torchlight, they would start to search for something to see, which is a trap to make the visitor, the person who comes to visit, let's not call it public, but very active in search. And this is very different from being acted upon by an interface such as any media platform, that we are acted upon within a certain degree of possibilities, and calling also for an experience that calls for your body. You are in the dark space, it's full of risks, and there's a sensation of fear, so you are afraid. You look down and you look up, and this increases the experience of what you are looking at. Sorry. So this is how it looks outside. With the experience I had from this communal project, that I decided not to show images because I think it was so wide that the typology of performances, films, wall paintings, etc., that could be somehow not good for a solo presentation of my work. I gained a very strong interest in nature, and especially by people who are dealing with very speculative text. They are writing what they call the scientific fabulations, and I give this example because this somehow what Vinciane Desprez talks, for me, serves me well to open a space for heterogeneity of subjects, being human or non-human, being what kind of gender and origin, and that's my goal in art somehow, to produce a new gaze that is interested and open to this other outside there. Not other, maybe it's this or it's or all the space. So I end up making very new work, and mostly I was starting to deal with the deep sea as a space that was partially unknown. So it's offering for many of these people a space where they can have more freedom in the way they speculate about possibilities of the future. And a series of works I made in glass for an exhibition were so strange for me, were so I was not capable of saying, is this or what I want from this. So as in the past I did a lot of work directly in the streets without any labeling saying this is art or that's not art. I took them to the seashore, and I installed them to, it's some sort of rite of passage where it's me who transforms, it's not the object is fixed, and I learn what I want from these objects in the moment I'm going to exhibit them. And this entry of the environment into the space goes very close to what Ursula K. Le Guin says, that we don't need more heroes to tell stories and so on. You need a carrier bag, and things come in, and you start adding and you build the story. And basically it's my attitude when I go to nature. I let it affect me in the way I perceive it. I perceive what the object, and it transforms. Also these objects start to be performed also in a domestic space of a different nature, and many times these photo sessions or temporary installations, they are used in the catalogs of my exhibitions. You don't see the shots of the museum shots. You see something that adds one other layer of meaning to the work, as if the work couldn't stop there, and it continues and it will continue. That's the way it can continue to be alive. Because for me, art is not a given. I think it's always a act of becoming. The artwork becomes art every time you are in front of that work, and that's the problem of the frames and all the grandmasters and so on, that people stop really thinking if this nowadays 2023 is this a work. Not that you are taking the context, it's just that this leap towards the future is, I think, the most important thing for art, as someone told here in a brilliant way. I mean, it's so bad to see images like this when my work is meant to be touched and so on. So this painting and this, I forgot this kid, the name of this, it could be understood as an artwork, but it's only made to have the right perspective when you are looking at the glass sculptures. So when you move around the fractal abstract painting that you could see, this guy is painting like this or that, makes this more jelly and alive with your motion. So that's the reason why it was there. And the next project I did, I exhibit some of these objects you saw before, and basically there's a history of painting that goes mostly on the walls, because it's a cultural first, it's a very human cultural gaze somehow. You expect that. You also expect, when you get in galleries, more and more they push the sculptures in higher prints, so you acknowledge it as cultural. And I was very interested in making this floor piece where people would walk over it. So there's a series of negotiations that people already have to do. Can I step? Can I step just on the carpet? Can I step in the paint? Can I touch the textiles? How distant I have to be from a glass? And you see the painting here I made is a challenge for the imposed architecture, just to make it a bit more dreamy. For me, the important thing in this work is the way you convoke, you invite for a new choreography, where people have to make decisions and start to go from place A to place B, this object to other object, and they start to become active editors of what they are looking. But there's another aspect, that is the fact that it's on the floor, that once you bend, you become conscious of your body as an active receiver of what you are experiencing. And that is, of course, probably also a reaction against the highway that exists between the eye and the brain, that I think is very short. It's very fast and very short. I want it to be slow, and I want it to become a different sort of experience. And as you can see, everyone thinks that we are looking at the ocean and they are creatures of the ocean, and they are all made with what we might call process-based abstractions. So what matters here is the space you give between what you are looking and what you are meant to believe that is there. And then you are compensating. It's like it's a trap again to become active viewer. But it's also, it's also a question that is very interesting in relation to nature and art, is that process-based art abstractions are, as process, something that have a mimetic quality to nature, probably closer to nature than the depiction of nature or the representation of nature, because you place the various elements and forces at play that are, have a mimetic quality towards the natural process in nature. So I start painting again, and basically accidents, or there was a question I think you made about the machines not having flows in the execution, and I paint on fabrics, so everything, the first gesture is there from the beginning till the end. It's a very Etruscan process, because I do art. AI is a possibility, and I have a wide thing, but I do art also for a personal aim. I think if tomorrow no one wants to know about my artwork, I will continue doing, because I need to do it. So I paint with this, which is, it's very dramatic, because everything, all the taken mistakes become nowadays for me, with a big lightness, I say they are events. So and they build the images, in fact. And when you go into detail, you might spend a lot of time drifting and making the same kind of edition, active viewing that I was talking about when you are walking around. Other paintings are far more into another aspect, that is how this wonder about nature can increase your language, because they bring many things that you didn't know. So I spend a lot of time when we were talking about this floor piece that was like, oh, this is animal gaze by looking down. It's also a mechanic gaze, because I do a lot of research by these ROV videos that have 2 or 3 marine biologists in the boat eating frozen pizza and talking, oh, look at that, blah, blah, blah. And I spend hours looking at it with pleasure, and that triggers works like this, that is a sort of hospital for octopus to give birth. Like, again, the performativity, it's important. It's like people come in behind this curtain and they have to open up, they have to touch it, and that imprints a movement, and there's almost like the visitor of the gallery becomes also a performer somehow, like it or not. This could be taken as an ethical problem. Oh, so with what I did was to bring together 4 or 5 different works from different periods and create a sort of a colony or a community where they have some kind of interdependency, that they need one to the other to become a work. This exhibition, instead of having a text outside to read and know what you are going to see, had 5 artworks from the collection of the museum that were stimulations to the act of imagination. Somehow, I wish, when I was writing to, which I'm not saying anything that I wrote, I start by saying, In Praise of Shadows, that is a book by a Japanese thinker, because I think I'm against clarity. In fact, I like the dark sides. I like ideas that keep a shadowy idea, so we can continue working and working on it. So I think art sometimes, instead of bringing clarity, offers a shadow zone on the idea that it becomes again elastic and not static, and we can continue using it. That's, I think, why I feel good with the deep sea as a space, as a mental space. And that's why maybe I want to know part, but I would like to preserve it and partially unknown. And again, here, so what was missing of all this, the new objects in the exhibition are these shells that mimic somehow the shells you saw first with the glasses on the beach. And of course, I don't think that I could represent them or remake them, so I use strategies well known to the art, like Thomas Saraceno, by putting 3 actors acting one. It's a well-known strategy, but in a new paradigm, so it becomes a new. You don't have to always perform a new, you just have to bring small portions of a new. So what I did, basically, it's very close to the idea that if you want to represent a chair, you paint the space beneath the chair. That was a sentence by Willem de Kooning that then Bruce Nauman transformed into a sculpture. So I made piles of earth with different objects, and they become objects that were there, being industrial or natural debris, and some came with it and others didn't. But it's this idea of a negative that becomes a positive, which is very close to one of the origins of this exhibition, that was Rachel Carson's book, The Sea Around Us, the first chapter called The Grey Beginnings, where she explains that the Earth was built, since it was so hot, there was this thick cloud around the planet, and the basins and the mountains were sculptured in darkness. That's the thing. Of course, here darkness was a way just to converge all the forces and attention to this, and it was so amazing how much time people spend there. You need the guy from the light, he said, you need around, I don't know, 3 minutes something to start to see everything as it is. And this, to make this exhibition possible without prints, with glassworks and in total darkness, and a show that stays for 2 or 3 months in the space, maybe sometimes the new comes with a more of a ethics you produce, and small shifts, like not having a text and making a team coming together and operate a change in the institution, in the modus operandi. So I took everyone to the Gulbenkian park that was working in my exhibition, and we were installing the works around and making photographs. So everyone became initiated like me to touch and to keep the works. During the exhibition, they would come in and they see, oh, this fabric is not well, and they would become the caretakers of the exhibition, which made it possible to be permanently good, because people would come and roll in the fabrics or lay down. There was a girl that said, oh, I come every Tuesday to meditate during 1 hour or whatever. So this is also something that became to a book and enlarges the possibilities. I'm not so keen on fixing my work into or the work is this. I think it's context makes things becoming here and now, and how people come and bring their experiences and social and political events, or or states of mind, and they territorialize my work. I see my work as a receptacle of projections from others, and I need it to come as such. I trained mostly as a painter, and I was invited to CAV, that is a visual art center attached to the history of photography, and I was asked to do a work for them. This is the Palace of Inquisition, so it's very dark side. Underneath these woods, there are cells where they torture people, etc. So, and they cannot touch it. So, what you have is that you have a series of walls that they can rotate, and the exhibitions become usually in U shapes or in the big walls, and the choreography of the visitor is always the same somehow. So I thought I would do a painting that will go around and will create a new choreography to the people. And it's very important for me that you never get the full perception, but like comprehending, seeing the beginning and the end of what you are looking. So I went around with this painting that is 87 meters with 160, and it was made very fast, depicting small elements from a giant squid. And you come in and you look at this apparently abstract painting, and to see the work you have to start a motion that goes hand in hand with something that is a painting that is so wide. You have to start to edit it, and I think cinema forms painting very much. So your sense of painting starts to be that of editing, and your movement makes the painting happen. I'll just pass some images. And again, I never show the entire animal because, you know, I start to think like, yeah, I remember going to Vasco da Gama Aquarium and see this giant squid there in Formo, and Jules Verne 20,000 thing. And so I think it's very important that could trigger the imagination of people to imagine how this animal would be. But many times it goes from zoom in, zoom out, like this is the, let's call it the legs of the animal that are getting really big with mouths, and then it becomes small and more detailed. But if you see at the, like this more or less real size, this then open up to the imagination of people, oh, this looks like a Japanese landscape or this or that, and said, no, they are just splashes of paint, and they produce this. So then, after this accident is provoked, then I go and I spend, let's say, 20 hours around to enhance something that I like about it. Like someone who is looking at clouds and saying, ah, this is important, and I will acquire it for me as work. I'll pass fast because we go through this. So I'm currently preparing an opera in Bregenz in Austria. So I made that work and I said, okay, I'm doing this work because I'm sick of just talking about ideas, and I want the dramaturg and the composer to make a first interaction with me, so we actually do something. I said, I made this painting and we are going to build a machine, and we created some sort of proto-cinematic experience with it, with a music composition already with some words from the libretto. And this image of it. And I'm done. It's 30 minutes.
I think I can start with some considerations, and then we can open up for a small questions from the public. So today we were talking a lot about these common interest between art and science, and for sure the artist has interest in science research and vice versa. But thinking in a more practical collaboration point of view, it's still very hard for the artist to go to the universe or to the workspace of a scientist, the lab space of a scientist. I think the art has some way of working that deals a lot with the accidental information or with the contingency of the path of the research that we can see also in science, but it's still in more institutional way, let's say. The science is still in a more hermetical environment than where art happens. And so how I don't know, what's some considerations is not answered, but how that collaboration in terms of research can really happen, maybe building up a third place where it can observe the two ways of working, or I don't know, probably Susan has experience on that and can also talk a little bit, but if you have some considerations on that, how it can happen, like the true collaboration where both sides are in a common space of experimentation and research.
Well, I think first we have to be lucky with the people we come together, no? It's coming together is I do since I'm studying arts that I collaborate with others. It was I studied in Caldas da Rainha. It's a small town. We didn't have much. We just trust on each other to make things. What became for me a nice proactive form of not being chosen permanently, because artists are chosen always by the gallery of honor, the art critic, the collector, the curator, etc., etc. Then this became a tool also to be also making my choices and not waiting to be chosen. That is very decadent in a way, and doesn't give us capacity to free speech to talk, because tomorrow that person that chose you is upset with you, will not choose you anymore. So you cannot talk freely. But anyway, so it's 20 years maybe of collaborations, and I find it a must-do and a total failure. And I want to continue to rehearse, because it's the most important thing. But it's meant to fail, I think. But my sensation today was that I have such a literacy towards science, but I also think that scientists also lack a lot of what I would call empirical experience. So maybe little by little, if we come together in the same spaces, maybe we choose better and we'll find the best people to be. I mean, we are so many. We want different things. So, and there's place for everyone. So we have to find this place that is also a safe space, not with public, not whatever, and we come and rehearse potential people we want to work with. It could be a workshop where we go and we put scientists trying to make work and talk with them about what really matters in this or that thing. But it also can be the opposite, and we go and we learn to analyze and talk and wonder about things in discussions or in the lab work, or I don't know. I don't even know what could be, you know. That's my level of illiteracy that I found very interesting with Antonio, that it but for the people I've been reading, it's more and more common to talk about this symbiotic work where biologists, artists, philosophers, so on, they are taking profit from each other. And many times they say that it's not just, it's the nomenclature of our work that is shifted, you know? It's not just the language, it's also the process, and this is creating a new, I mean, if I had my telephone here pointing to the public, this would transform completely this conversation, because I am using an instrument of power over the other. So what kind of strategies do we want to use to enhance a very familiar ground where we feel comfortable to express ourselves without feeling fear of being misread or being less acknowledged or in this or that, and say, okay, this let's call it a safe space, and where we can roll over paint for one afternoon, and then we cook together, and then maybe after the second glass there's one person that is closer to you talking more because this or that. Maybe we need first to rehearse these spaces to find the better connections between artists and scientists. From my experience as an initiator of collaborations.
Well, I don't have much of an experience. Obviously, we have a lot of collaborations within the scientific world, as I think Hugo is describing these collaborations within the art world. I think crossing borders is the challenge. One comment on
when it was rolling on paint, I was thinking of scientists.
Exactly. Yeah. We can do that and much more. But one thing is really understanding each other's, environment and way of making things, and it's not only concepts, but for example, one thing that Julie mentioned that I found interesting was this idea that things in science are much more organized than in art in terms of the process, and certainty it's playing a major role in scientific discovery. I think any person that writes grants knows that what you write in a grant proposal is not what you end up doing in practice, because then you run the first experiment and the result is something different from expected, and there's something totally not expected that happens, and we go to a different route. So I think that the process itself, I'm not claiming it's similar, but there's more degrees of freedom in science than what apparently looks like. And I think what Hugo was saying, and I think we have had these conversations with other people, it's a current challenge, that is how to put people interacting from these two different fields in a meaningful way, and I think our suggestion of doing it organically by providing a space and time for people to freely interact and see what emerges from there is probably a good strategy. There are examples like the Science Gallery, where this type of projects have been developed in the past, that they brought people together, and if you give a topic or a common goal to a group of people with different backgrounds, and again, common time, a common space and time, interesting things might emerge from there. But I think you touched an important point, that there's a lot of matching that it's needed. You cannot just pick up randomly a scientist and an artist and expect them to do something meaningful together. They need to match in terms of personality, to be able to interact and like each other and understand each other.
Yeah, I tried, sometimes even social media, I follow some people and we start to have some sort of interaction, and then I decided to show what I was doing, or someone asked and so on, and then while others approach me by seeing what I do and say, oh, I'm doing this talk, can I use your images to this and that, and which is interesting. That it's not always what you desire. Wow, this guy is doing this person is doing such a great work, and you want, but it might not fit the interest of the other person. So I think this is this equilibrium that I think it has to be rehearsed. We have to rehearse. We have to find things like this that we are doing here. It has to become so normal that it starts to generate naturally the further collaboration.
I think things have to resonate on each other's worlds, and I think we go back to meaning. It has to be meaningful for both sides.
Someone has questions?
If I can, yes. So thank you very much, very interesting, and I want to ask maybe Hugo. So what do you think exactly is what we are seeking in art to bring to science? Because of course we all try to do that. I'm also a scientist and a teacher, and I try to show nice pictures to my students, bright, nice pictures. So isn't it that we are trying to get a sensation, or the sensorial part of art, to make it more appealing to somebody? Or is there something in the essence of art that we are seeking, or are we just trying to show nice things so that we can attract more attention to what we're trying to say? And maybe in the exhibitions, this is really important. So I would ask if there's, so besides science, in the exhibition, in science communication, is there any evidence that, do you know if there's any evidence that an exhibition like you did with the neuron flashing is more appealing to the public than the regular, more scholastic kind of exhibition? Is there any studies that show that people really go more to this kind of exhibition if you have a more sensorial effect? And that would be important in the sense that that would really spread more scientific literacy maybe to the public. So is there a direct effect? Do you know about that?
Well, I think you have two different questions.
Yeah.
So the first question is what art can bring to science.
Yeah.
And I try to address that, maybe not very clearly.
No,
and I think it's so because you have, in my opinion, more degrees of freedom, and again, I would risk saying this, that I think there are more degrees of freedom in science than people usually believe, and there are less degrees of freedom in art than people usually believe, I would say so. So the processes are not complete opposites. But still, I think what you can use art for in science is to promote debates and ways of thinking that generate new ways of asking questions. And that can be very relevant to see things from angles that you have not seen before. So I would dare to say that apart from more immediate benefits like illustrating your science or data ways of ways of visualizing data and things that are more immediate, I think a more profound thing is that if you engage in a more deep collaboration or debate with someone from the art field, like sometimes happens when you have to debate things with people from social sciences, or from, even, as I was saying, even within science, the further away you move from your own field, the more intellectually challenged you are, and higher the probability that you come across a new perspective of looking into a problem that you have always. It's basically thinking outside the box. That's a cliche, but that's what we're talking about. You increase the probability that suddenly you will see something that you have been looking at for ages in a different way. And so it potentiates a new way of asking questions. And because asking questions is what fits science, I think it can be very relevant. Obviously, there will be a lot of unsuccessful efforts and maybe very sterile interactions, but that also happens within science. I mean, you have lots and lots of projects that just, you know, produce incremental stuff and not major groundbreaking discoveries. And I think this would be a possible way of fostering, you know, asking questions in a new perspective that would potentially enable, you know, groundbreaking advances. Now, I think the second question was about how by using arts in a science exhibition, if it makes the exhibition more appealing to the public. We did not run questionnaires in exhibitions, I don't know. I know it was very successful in terms of attendance. So we had over 85,000 people in less than 3 months, which for the average number of you know, visitors at Gulbenkian exhibitions, it was in the top 5,
Yeah, I noticed.
top 3.
Maybe there's some kind of studies.
Sorry.
No.
There's plenty of literature on that, and we're working on it, like in immersion and presence in spaces of informal science learning. Yes, it does make it. It makes a very, very big difference. And people are increasingly interested, especially in the use of not virtual but like extended reality, and basically making these spaces into palimpsests of sorts, right? And making these, you know, the interaction with individual items personalized, and in a way that like you can see read different narratives depending on what your background is, what your requires are, etc. Yeah, I can give you references if you're interested, but like this.
I believe it makes sense. Yes, it's good.
Just to add something, for me, and this could be silly to say, but for me, when you were asking, I thought of the work of Fernand de Vigny, famous psychotherapist who worked with autistic children in the 60s and 70s, and he took them to the countryside, and through the act of drawing, where they repeat their routine in their walks in the woods, it became very tangible for the people to see a level of language and expression through repetition, for instance, that helped a lot to deal with the children. So I think this is, I think that's the way art can help in an exhibition somehow, and this somehow is what we can offer. I think artists can offer a state of hypersensibility that happens within work, that we might touch or open doors that we are not even aware, because the work happens in front of us. In a way, we start the work, but the work happens in front of us, and now we have to become elastic enough to embrace and say, this is my work. It's something interior that becomes exterior. So there's this permanent, it's not 100, not all the artists work like this, of course, but this is what art can offer, and has to do with a state of hypersensibility towards certain things that go beyond language. That's why I use Fernand de Vigny as an example. I think our work extrapolates language, and I think it's very important that for many areas of knowledge that we have to understand that language is our main tool, and it's good, but it might be short to guess something that is there and we don't see it. Basically, you think of the Wittgenstein when he talks about the glass bottle to catch the flies. The fly is always attracted by light. That's why it misses the point. That is the only dark spot in the bottle is the exit. And this is what we can offer, the black dot.
João, and we have to finish to listen to Suzanne.
Now, I was just going to say that the problem is that there are many questions for which science does not and cannot have an answer. And but we still need an answer to those questions. And that's where art comes in very often. In my own field, there's this example of is one of the great figures of mammal paleontology of the 20th century, Björn Kurten. He had a hypothesis about Neanderthals and why they had disappeared. And his hypothesis was that, you know, humans are neotenic animals, and because the facial features of the Neanderthals were more sort of primitive evolutionarily because they retained ancestral features, at the time of contact between these two populations, the female Neanderthal would be attracted to the more childlike physiognomy of the modern human male, and because the two species would be species truly, the reproductive potential of the Neanderthal female would have been captured by modern human males to produce sterile offspring, thereby leading the Neanderthals to extinction very rapidly. Now, this was in his day. This could not be tested. So he did not write a paper to propose this hypothesis. He wrote a novel, actually 2 novels, Dance with the Tiger and Single Tusk. And 30 years later, the hypothesis that could not be tested in his time, and that he tried to answer writing novels, inspired people like myself and others to look into that issue and actually come up with, you know, answers that are grounded in the scientific method. They're testable hypotheses that we can address via experiment and replication. So, in my view, is that there are equally valid ways to look into the world, all around the world, and of asking questions that address different aspects of our need to know in different ways. So, yeah, it's not just about, you know, utilitarian collaboration between different people doing different things and coming together to be more efficient or more effective. I think it's more than that. It's just science is not everything. It does not provide answers to everything we need to know or think about.
Thank you.